Hello, Jennifer Easton, reporting from YouTubia. Welcome and thank you for viewing this video, having a little fun, doing a little retrospective, and looking at some of the voices, the personalities that I was influenced by. This short list is not comprehensive, not conclusive, but it's just a little retrospective to look at some of the people that I really got a lot out of. I gleaned a lot of truth, and I was able to sort out whatever was mixed in as filler, I'll say, okay? Because I don't want to believe that most of them were trying to deceive us, but they might have. You let me know. This is up for debate. I don't have any, tried and true theories here. This is just a conversation. So I'd love to see what you think about some of these personalities, these characters, these truth tellers that I am going to identify as some of my favorites, I'll say, okay? So I'll be looking forward to the engagement in the chatmosphere. I'm confident that the pictures will invoke names familiar to you. I'll start with Hal Lindsey. He was probably my first. And then moving on to, you have George Nori, Art Bell, Carl Sagan, as well as, hey, David Icke. I even issued an apology about the reptilians. Sorry, bro. And we have Alex Jones. I've been a little iffy on him. Hey, Alex, yeah, you shared something some content of mine on your site, okay? We could chat about that another time. I was just kind of a little bit put off by that you took some content of mine, and maybe it wasn't you. I think it was Health Ranger. But anyway, I digress. Who else is on this short list? We have Paul Mooney, who really, wow, he did red pill us about a lot of the Hollywood shenanigans, and I'll just pick Richard Pryor as one of the comedians. Although he was dirty in terms of not friendly for children, I did have cousins that my uncle, he had a lot of Richard Pryor albums. Yes, albums. And in those albums, it was a lot of truth mixed in with entertainment. So the comedians were, I think they were more truthful and more courageous when I was growing up. So that is my short list. Did I miss anybody? I have, yeah, I think I caught everybody. If I missed anybody in my thumbnail, just let me know. Well, I missed George Carlin. So because I missed George Carlin, let's start off with a little clip of George Carlin in a little retrospective.
Listen, last time you were on the show, we got on a subject and we ran out of time. You were talking about words.
That's my babies.
Yeah.
Just take a simple thing like the word alter. Alter and change are supposed to mean the same thing. You can alter your plans, you can change your plans, and you've done the same thing. But if you alter your pants and you change your pants...
Just wanted to share a few words with you that amuse me, and combinations of words like occasional irregularity. What other kind can there be? If it were frequent, it would be regularity. We got things like jumbo shrimp. I stare at that a long time on the menu. Jumbo shrimp.
George Carlin dropped a lot of truth in his comedy, and one of my favorite comedy bits by George Carlin was his whole thing about having stuff when you go on vacation, like you collect all kinds of stuff in your house that you don't need. This is the human condition, of course, because I believe that comedy that is truly funny is just basically observational, a lot like what Seinfeld did with his show. So George Carlin talks about how you take your stuff, you pack it up, you go on vacation, and you probably remember this bit, and then you go on vacation and you might visit another island if you're somewhere like Hawaii, so you're going to other islands, so you leave your stuff in the hotel room and you take other stuff to the other island that you're about to visit. And it was just an observation about how we just have stuff. We have material things that truly aren't important when we look at the bigger picture. But it was just great to hear it portrayed in a comical way. Let me know if you remember that stand-up bit. But if I were to recall one of the most memorable, you could say just one-liners or whatever from George Carlin, would be when he reminded us that we were not in the club. And you know what the club is. And be glad that we aren't in it. That is definitely an invitation that I'm glad I did not receive or did not respond. My earliest recollection of truther type of literature would be Hal Lindsey's book, The Late Great Planet Earth. My mother at the time, she worked at an evangelical society in downtown Philadelphia. Beautiful brownstone. I would go to work with her often, and I would stuff envelopes and, stamp them. And I had so much fun. I just remember this job of hers. But they had a lot of reading materials. And one of the reading materials, again, was this book. And as a young child, I was intrigued by the book, and I actually started reading it. I can't remember how young I was, but I had to have been in second grade, okay? So yeah, a little bit precocious in that way. But my mother was the one that whet my appetite when it came to eschatology. She would often take me and my cousin Jill and my cousin Kyle, and she would have these conversations with us about end times and the book of Revelations. So I remember her saying that one day you're going to hear a trumpet sound and all of this stuff is going to happen. And I was scared, and I was also excited by this mysterious event that was going to happen. And she sounded so confident that it was going to happen in my lifetime. Even though we weren't a part of a doomsday cult or anything like that, lots of other newsworthy things happened. I remember the Jonestown, Guyana type of thing, the, Jim Jones Kool-Aid incident. And I remember my mother being very upset about things like that. And some of the conversations that I would listen to with the adults. But it wasn't until later that I caught up again with Hal Lindsey and his message, because he had a TV ministry. So I caught up with him. I attended a few, conferences, and I was really into that whole rapture. I'll call it a theory. I had a friend in church when I lived in California who challenged that belief. Challenged it with receipts, so much so that I changed my position. In evaluating Hal Lindsey's message today, however, I see an agenda. And we can talk about this at another time, because I'd be interested in also seeing what you would say looking back. I was a bit surprised by the Orson Welles collab with Hal Lindsey. Didn't see this film, so yeah, it's interesting looking back on things. Next up, I remember how important radio was when I was growing up. So I recall a radio show that I listened to in high school. And this radio show, I believe, came on once a week, but I'll never forget being so glued and attentive to this narrative about Paul McCartney being unalived, and they were repeating that Paul McCartney was the walrus. Whatever that meant, it went right over my head. Next up, I recall the comedy of Richard Pryor. I was not allowed to listen to Richard Pryor, but when I was at my cousin's visiting, my uncle had many of his albums, his comedy albums, as well as Bill Cosby comedy albums. But of course, children are going to gravitate towards the things that they're not allowed to do. So my cousins would break out the Richard Pryor, and it would just burn my ears, all of the cursing. But there was truth in between a lot of the shock content. And looking up this one particular one that I remember, which it's too offensive to say, I'll just show it, and you probably remember this content. You could hardly find anything about it now that so much of the internet has been scrubbed, and a lot of things are deemed inappropriate at this time. So a lot of comedians are not allowed to be funny anymore. Have you noticed that? One of the writers that worked with Richard Pryor would be Paul Mooney, one of my favorite comedians, I'll say, and his honesty and just the way he delivered the truth. He had a lot of insight into Hollywood insider information. Turns out after his death, a lot came out that might be true about him. Not really concerned about that right now. Just want to highlight that Paul Mooney, he was telling a lot about the Bush administration, and he is one of the people that called it with this relationship. He did say that it was allegedly romantic, okay? These two criminals. These two 9/11 criminals. I'm not going to get into it right now, okay?
I can't find bin Laden. I can't find him. That's because you are bin Laden. Weapons of mass destruction. I know they have them, I'm sure. Yeah, you and your daddy, because you got the receipt.
Next up on my list is Carl Sagan. I was extremely infatuated with his show Cosmos. I never missed one. I was quite the nerdy kid. Yes, okay, have your fun. So this astronomer, planetary scientist, cosmologist, astrophysicist, astrobiologist, author, and science communicator, as well as a contributor to research on extraterrestrial life. I would say that Carl Sagan, I gave him a lot of credence, but looking back on Carl Sagan now, I would say that I could see a lot of programming in terms of agenda, especially for a heliocentric worldview. So now I'm looking back on a lot of these people that had an influence on me, and I'm able to balance things out, take the good, and just, leave whatever is left.
Here's a map of ancient Egypt. I've inserted 2 sticks or obelisks, one up here in Alexandria and one down here in Sagan. Now, if at a certain moment each stick casts no shadow at all, that's perfectly easy to understand, provided the Earth is flat. If the shadow at Sagan is at a certain length, and the shadow at Alexandria is the same length, that also makes sense on a flat Earth. But how could it be, Eratosthenes asked, that at the same instant there was no shadow at Sagan and a very substantial shadow at Alexandria? The only answer was that the surface of the Earth is curved. Not only that, but the greater the curvature, the bigger the difference in the lengths of the shadows. The sun is so far away that its rays are parallel when they reach the Earth. Sticks at different angles to the sun's rays will cast shadows at different lengths. For the observed difference in these shadow lengths, the distance between Alexandria and Sagan had to be about 7 degrees along the surface of the Earth. By that I mean, if you imagine these sticks extending all the way down to the center of the Earth, they would there intersect at an angle of about 7 degrees. Well, 7 degrees is something like a 50th of the full circumference of the Earth, 360 degrees. Eratosthenes knew the distance between Alexandria and Sagan. He knew it was 800 kilometers. Why? Because he hired a man to pace out the entire distance so that he could perform the calculation I'm talking about. Now, 800 kilometers times 50 is 40,000 kilometers. So that must be the circumference of the Earth. That's how far it is to go once around the Earth. That's the right answer. Eratosthenes' only tools were sticks, eyes, feet, and brains, plus a zest for
But wait, there's more. Carl Sagan could not have predicted 2021, but he did see it coming. He wrote the following back in 1995, and we quote, "I have a foreboding of an America in my children's or grandchildren's time when the United States is a service and information economy, when nearly all the manufacturing industries have slipped away to other countries, when awesome technological powers are in the hands of a very few, and no one representing the public interest can even grasp the issues, when the people have lost the ability to set their own agendas or knowledgeably question those in authority, when, clutching our crystals and nervously consulting our horoscopes, our critical faculties in decline, unable to distinguish between what feels good and what's true, we slide almost without noticing back into superstition and darkness. The dumbing down of America is most evident in the slow decay of substantive content in the enormously influential media, the 30-second sound bites now down to 10 seconds or less, lowest common denominator programming, credulous presentations on pseudoscience and superstition, but especially a kind of celebration of ignorance." Roll that around for a while. Those were among his final published words. He died 10 months later. Here we are 25 years later, realizing just what he was trying to tell us back then.
Next on my short list would be Art Bell. Arthur William Bell was an American broadcaster, and he was an author. So he was the founder and the original host of the paranormal themed radio program Coast to Coast AM, which was syndicated. And anybody who worked with me when I was charge nurse at Los Encinas in Pasadena, California, I am sorry I made you listen to the Art Bell Show whenever I was working, but that was what got me through all of the craziness, to add more crazy onto crazy. Wink, wink, you know what I mean. But anyway, yeah, when I was charge nursing and I had to do all of my charting, I would turn on Art Bell. I worked at night, and that got me through the night shift, okay? Sorry to those that worked under me.
Art Bell and his wife Ramona say they encountered something from out there in 1994.
We were on the way home from Las Vegas, about a half mile from where we're standing at the moment.
I just happened to look out the rearview mirror and just saw something coming up from behind us. And it looked like it wasn't normal. And I kept saying, what the hell is that?
And this thing floated above our heads, doing about 30 miles an hour.
That's a good word, float. Yeah.
Floated, yeah, it floated. Or had to have been defying gravity, or it was a lighter-than aircraft. I don't know. But it was triangular. It was monstrous. The moon and the stars went away, and there it was above us. And we stood and watched it go across the valley and head toward the mountains.
It was huge, a cigar-shaped.
The common cause of ufology is to finally determine what in the hell is flying in our skies.
It hurt your eyes, so I turned away. When I looked back, it's gone.
I think that Coast to Coast AM is the main conduit for ufology information. And over my phone lines have come the most informed ufologists, the best scientists, and some of the craziest people you'll ever meet.
And I was moving very slowly with the cloud cover.
It definitely overflew New York City.
And I never heard about a triangular UFO until I looked it up, and I found that you had seen one.
Yep.
And
Coast to Coast began as actually a political show, kind of like everybody else's political show that radio is infested with. And one day I got sick of doing the same damn thing over and over again, same politics over and over. And I began to sort of inject a different kind of programming, aliens and...
3 points of light. The weird thing about them was...
Coast to Coast became the fourth most popular program on American radio.
It was really weird.
Like they were doing a dance?
Yeah, exactly. And they went over the rooftop.
I think we're fascinated with the whole concept of alien intelligence because it would be so strange if we were all alone. Imagine for a moment how it would feel if we were all alone, if there was no other life, intelligent life, anywhere in all that you see out there.
George Nori took over after Art Bell. I do believe they had other hosts in between, but George Nori is one of the more memorable ones, and I believe still currently hosting the syndicated show. George Nori grew up in Detroit. He is Lebanese Egyptian, and he was also in the United States Navy. Nori received a lot of criticism in 2020 when he voiced his opinion about the Coco V Plandemic, saying that the media is creating hysteria by blowing the figures out of proportion. The media is not putting that into perspective. So the New York Times went on to publish stories about him, and they were comparing him to Art Bell and saying that Art Bell wouldn't let these kind of things happen or spread medical misinformation, and to be a jab skeptic.
I am with the legend right now, George Nori. George, how are you?
Robbie, I'm wonderful. We're at the Conscious Life Expo, having a great time, meeting great people like yourself and your staff, having a good time.
I'm getting a download from Sirius B right now.
What do they want?
I think I just need to do a quick check for you, George.
Clean as a whistle.
Yeah, lovely hair. George, we love you and we appreciate you having you.
Thanks, Robbie.
Thanks for doing this.
Next on the short list would be none other than Alexander Emmerich Jones, or Alex Jones as we know him, who the media describes as an alt-right American conservative, far-right radio show host, and prominent conspiracy theorist out of Austin, Texas. And he hosts a website, InfoWars. Alex Jones has taken ranting to art levels, okay? I would probably say he is second to Morton Downey Jr., if you remember him. A lot of us have a rather unique relationship with Alex Jones and his truth-telling. I would say that I recall incidences in my early listening and viewing of Alex Jones's content. I recall him doing a few things that made me question him. One, I recall he was down at one of the federal, treasury buildings. Actually, it was in my hometown of Philadelphia. He had a bullhorn in his hand, and I kind of caught Alex allegedly being an agent provocateur. That's what I saw and heard personally. Now, Alex, this is allegedly. One thing that left a bad taste in my mouth with Alex was that he used, or I'll say someone from his staff used some of my content. I had made a video. It was just on an original YouTube channel, very small channel like the one here. And I just did a rant about mandatory flu shots, and I was just doing it to practice speaking. Well, it wound up on Alex Jones's website via the Health Ranger. I thought that was kind of, I don't know, as a small content creator, for someone to do that and not ask permission, I was a little bit put off. But it doesn't change the fact that Alex Jones helped me to wake up to a lot of things. He turned me into a staunch libertarian, protecting my rights when I go through these airports and get harassed by the people at TSA and this whole Patriot Act. So he did educate me in a lot of ways. So again, I take the good with the bad. Overall, he is a hoot, and I'm entertained by him a lot. That video is no longer around because GooTube took that channel away. But I was ranting about my experience and observation when it comes to Big Pharma. I worked in Big Pharma for 10 years, and I also had a grandmother who was injured by the polio jab juice.
I don't like them putting chemicals in the water that turn the friggin' frogs gay.
We're not sure how he knows the true feelings of our amphibian friends, but we'll take his word for it. Either way, Alex Jones clearly won't stand for it anymore.
Trying to control myself, trying to be professional about this, but at a certain point, I'm just really getting pissed. Excuse me. We're not going to have. I'm sorry. There's an attack on the species by a guild of psychopaths, and they must be defeated. I'm going to settle down. Excuse me.
Wow, Alex Jones. He must have some interesting blood pressure numbers. Boy, a lot of it does seem showman, but again, to give credit where credit is due, I think Alex Jones woke a lot of people up to a lot of things that were important. Whether he is controlled opposition, we could debate that at a later time. But next up, to complete this short list, would be none other than David Icke. I first learned about David Icke from a nurse that I worked with. I did a travel nurse assignment in St. Croix, and this nurse gave me the book because she felt that I would get a lot out of it. Later, when I got to know her more, I learned that she was from an elite family, actually, and she had been sold into the skin game, I'll say, by her parents. And she had a friend that lived on the island with a very similar background. And their stories were amazing. I would meet with them once a week and have lunch, and they would tell me things that were unbelievable. But they were hiding out because they told me that in that life, usually by 30 years old, if you're used for those things, they were basically given to men that had positions in Parliament and other things in Europe. They had their own flats when they were teenagers, actually, and young women. But they told me that by 30 years old, a lot of times these people are unalived, destroyed, but they happen to escape, and they lived basically unplugged from that elite world that they were born into. So when I read The Biggest Secret by David Icke, I was resonating with a lot of it, but what really shut me down was the talk of reptilians. That's when I shut the book and I didn't want to have anything more to do with it. I later had to apologize to David Icke when I came across an article about the underground Nagas in Los Angeles. It was actually reported in the Los Angeles Times. But I want to read a comment by one of our Chatmosphere brothers from Ireland that made a good point about David Icke and the reptilian thing. Quote, I really got the whole reptilian thing straight away, but it did make me paranoid for a while, so I didn't think about it for a few years. Psychopaths primarily use the reptilian cortex at the back of the head, responsible for fight or flight, unaliving and dog eat dog, sexual impulses, etc. So metaphorically, David was right anyways. I like that response.
Charles and these bloodline families not only interbreed with many different women to produce the bloodline, but they actually have sperm banks, because the sperm bank holds the genetic code that they operate on. And part of that genetic code is it's had deleted from it any feeling of empathy. Very, very important point. These people do not have the ability to empathize with the consequences for others of their actions. So 3,000 dead on 9/11, well, there's no emotional consequence at all, because that ability to empathize, which is a fail-safe mechanism of human behavior, has been deleted from the genetic structure purposely. But this man, who was an unofficial Rothschild, one of thousands and thousands, this guy was telling me, who were produced by the breeding programs and the artificial breeding programs, was designated a specific role, and that was to have a position within the Christian church, even though they were all practicing Satanists, and undermine it and dictate its direction from within. Because they produce these children, and they bring them up under different names, you will not have a situation where every president's a Rockefeller, where every prime minister is a Rothschild. You get the picture. Because they come through different names. They're called Clinton, they're called Bush, they're called Obama, etc. But forget the name, the genetic structure, the bloodline is the same. And this bloodline filters down, not just at from the high positions, but right out into mainstream society. Why do some artists who have a certain amount of talent, some not very much, why do they get picked up by the corporations to become these big influencers of young people and other people through the entertainment and the music industry, and others with incredible talent never get off the ground? It's because they are chosen. The scale and fine detail in which these opinion formers right across society, from entertainment, media, through to politics, etc., are actually brought through from childhood to do those things is absolutely incredible. And when the lid really comes off this, and it's coming off, then people are going to look at the world they've been living in and see just... Even if people now think, yes, it's a controlled world, whoa, wait till you see the level of control. And they have their people all over the place in all these different institutions, religions, etc., to push society in the desired direction.
All in all, I think that, again, these voices were needed. And a lot of us are at a point now where we can sort through things in a better way and not be emotionally triggered by things that are opposed to things that we grew up being programmed with. So I like this place that a lot of us are at and the conversations we're having. I look forward to having more. This might be a fun topic for a live stream. Let me know. I, again, will enjoy your responses. Already I see people sharing some of their favorite voices, characters that have helped them along this journey of truth finding. Take care and God bless. I'll see you soon.
Thank you.